priority is to continue from where things were on Friday and to provide continuity to the country and to fulfill the aspirations of the people.
Pakistan's Prime Minister resigns after a shocking Supreme Court ruling removing him from Parliament. Hello, I'm Nathan King in for Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Hello again. Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was forced to resign last week over allegations of corruption after the country's Supreme Court disqualified him from holding public office. This week, the Parliament elected an interim Prime Minister, Shahid Khan Abbasi. It's believed that Abbasi will remain in office until Sharif's brother Shahbaz wins a seat in Parliament in an upcoming election as his long-term successor.
We met with Nawaz Sharif. First of all, he congratulated the entire PMLN parliamentary party for staying united and for restoring, within 4 days, the democratic process that had broken down in the country, and for restoring it with a great majority. He has also advised that the policies which the previous government was following should be adhered to, particularly the projects related to CPEC, investment, power, dams, and motorway projects. He said that these projects should be completed at a higher speed than before, so that we can show the world that a prime minister in a country can change, but policies remain.
So amid this latest round of political turmoil in Pakistan, what's the way forward for the country? Joining us now to discuss, Husain Haqqani, he's former Pakistani Ambassador to the United States. He's also now Director of the South and Central Asia Center at the Hudson Institute. From Islamabad, we have Mustafa Sayed. He is Executive Director of the Pakistan-China Institute. And also with us in the studio, Shuja Nawaz. He's a Distinguished Fellow at the Atlantic Council. And from New York, Raza Rumi is a scholar in residence at the Ithaca College and a Pakistani Communist policy analyst and journalist as well. It's so great to have everyone with us as well. Let's obviously, I think, start in Islamabad with Mustafa Sayed. What's the feeling on the ground there after this quite shock move in Pakistani politics? Are people celebrating the rule of law in Pakistan, or are people calling this some sort of coup?
I think that this shows that the rule of law is supreme, and it will prevail regardless of which party is in power. And I think that also both the opposition and the ruling party and all other sections of society have accepted the verdict of the Supreme Court. And also, which is a pleasant change in Pakistan, we can see the continuity of government and continuity of the system, despite such a big change at the top. And when you are playing the speech of the Prime Minister, I think one of the key things is, and the message to the world is, that the key policies regarding economic reform and soliciting foreign investment are going to not only continue but be taken to their logical conclusion of materializing the projects on the ground, regardless of this very unprecedented change in the Prime Minister in Pakistan.
So, Ambassador Haqqani, is it all smooth sailing? Is this just a change at the top and nothing else changes?
Nathan, we've seen this movie in Pakistan before with some minor plot twists. The fact of the matter is that rule of law is when all institutions of state operate within their spheres. Very frankly, the Supreme Court is not the institution that should initiate judicial proceedings. Rule of law is when a case moves from a lower court through various stages of appeal and then goes to the Supreme Court. What the Supreme Court has done is essentially responded to politics. There was a lot of uproar in Pakistan over the fact that Prime Minister Sharif's offshore accounts were mentioned in the so-called Panama Papers. The opposition leader went to court the Supreme Court decided directly to disqualify, even though that does not have the air of rule of law. The people of Pakistan have become accustomed to that. No Pakistani Prime Minister has ever completed his term. Parliament has completed its term once before, the last one. But Prime Ministers are always either assassinated, dismissed, removed from office by the court. It's never the voters that are allowed to vote. Now, that does not mean that Mr. Nawaz Sharif has not done anything wrong. Of course, we all know his history. And very frankly, rumors of financial wrongdoing have swirled around him since he entered politics as a protege of the Pakistani military in the 1980s. The real thing that is going on in Pakistan is essentially the usual game of shadow plays, while at the same time there is an aspiration of the people for rule of law and for end of corruption. So all of that has intersected to write the lines for Mr. Sharif's removal from the stage at the moment. But as we've already seen from Prime Minister Abbasi's comments just now, he remains the director of the play, even if he has lost the lead role.
Behind the scenes, Shuja Nawaz, Ambassador Haqqani set it up nicely for us there. So we basically have an interim Prime Minister. Everyone's expecting the brother of Sharif to come in. What will happen then? And also, we're quite near to elections, aren't we? We nearly actually saw Sharif fulfill a term, which would have been the first time in Pakistani politics.
Well, first of all, I don't think a term is sacrosanct in parliamentary politics, whether in Britain or...
It happens everywhere. That's a very good point, yes.
You know, terms end, you come into power, you screw up, and the people throw you out. So I don't think that's sacrosanct. There are mechanisms in the law, and in this case, interestingly and ironically, it's a delicious irony of Pakistani politics that Mr. Sharif has been felled by his own self-inflicted wound, because he had supported the very clauses in the Constitution that led to his dismissal. There are two elements to it. One is Article 62 and then 63, which deal with qualification and disqualification. And the other is something called ROPA, which is the return of personal assets, which everybody has to fill in order to establish the base for their wealth when they join. So Mr. Sharif has been felled by his own machinations. The other good thing, and I think this is where I look at the future of Pakistan as perhaps being brighter than we are seeing it in all the hullabaloo of the moment, and that is that actually Mr. Sharif and his party met before the decision was announced and said that they will accept whatever decision the Supreme Court takes, whether it goes against them or in their favor. And I think that shows a certain trajectory towards some maturity in the system.
Well, but there are some who disagree with you, and I want to get back to that. Let's bring in Raza Rumi, but before we do that, of course, the opposition in Pakistan have had a lot to say about it, including a very popular figure who may get some electoral advantage in elections. We're talking about Imran Khan. Let's just hear from him, and then I want to get your reaction off the back.
Political parties don't have democracy in them. They're family parties. They're basically families run the parties. Actually, it's like a form of monarchy. But the reason why democracy came in was because you wanted leadership on merit. You know, people came through a process to become a leader. In monarchy, it's hereditary, it's through blood. We are still stuck into it.
Raza Rumi, is Imran Khan right in your view?
Yeah, I think he has a fair point. Pakistan's political parties unfortunately behave like dynastic monarchies, and there is little internal democracy. They're also not accountable within their party structures. They don't hold regular elections within the parties. And there's a lot that needs to be done with regard to the political development. But having said that, that is no reason for the Supreme Court or the military to fire a prime minister or to fire people's elected parliament. Mr. Sharif, you know, this was his third tenure in power. He has always been ousted by the permanent institutions of the state. In 1990s, the military and the president fired him in 93. In 99, Musharraf overthrew his government and threw him out of power and exiled him. And then he came back, bounced back after a decade or so. And this time he remains Pakistan's most popular national leader. He had an absolute majority in the parliament. And the reality is that he was going to win the next election as well. And the Supreme Court has actually not fired him because of Panama leaks or the corruption that had been alleged against him and his family, but they have fired him on a mere technicality, and that is being widely criticized and questioned in Pakistan now, because the Supreme Court, unfortunately, must not become the arbiter of national politics. It can settle some of the constitutional issues, but to fire and hire prime ministers, that is not the task of a few judges in a democracy.
Thank you, Raza. You brought up the military. There have been some accusations that the military may have had some sort of role, even by just sort of standing back. And let's go to Mustafa Sayed again in Islamabad. But first of all, I want to play this clip from the former railways minister because he sort of seemed to insinuate something.
We will not walk with bowed heads. God willing, we will keep our heads up. This is not the first time this has happened to us. It has happened again and again. We know very well what the crime of Nawaz Sharif and the Muslim League is. What do we ask for? We ask for civil supremacy in Pakistan. What do we ask for? We come to the parliaments through elections and are humiliated and dislodged from the parliaments. After that, we end up in jail.
Mustafa Sayed, your reaction to that? And any suggestion that the military may have been involved?
I think that there are always conspiracy theories in Pakistan. If whatever happens in the political scene, people jump to conclusions regarding the military's role or some sort of soft intervention. But I believe that there was a petition, there was a lot of political pressure, there were a lot of people, including Imran Khan, going to the court. And JIT was constituted, which did its investigations. And as my fellow panelists said, that all the parties said, we will accept the verdict of the Supreme Court, and we have no reservations on the Supreme Court's bench. So I think that the military has, in any case, too much on its plate, whether it's the Eastern Front or the Western Front or the internal challenges of terrorism in Pakistan, to be worrying about, trying to manipulate political affairs. And additionally, I don't think we have seen any friction, covert or overt, with the political government between the civil and the military of late, particularly with the onset of the new army chief, General Qamar Javed Bajwa.
Okay.
So I think it would be a little far-fetched and very speculative to point fingers at the military at this stage. I think it's an independent accountability process.
Okay.
And things have taken their course.
Thank you, Mustafa Sayed. We had Ambassador Haqqani shaking his head throughout that.
Well, I've written a whole book on it called Pakistan Between Mosque and Military. Look, when the military intervenes and doesn't want to be acknowledged as the intervener, for example, when it's not taking power in a coup d'etat, which is what the Pakistan military has done on a lot of times, by the way, it operates in the shadows. The evidence doesn't come immediately. So I find this ingenuous to say that there is no immediate evidence, because in 1988, when they created the IGI, in 1990, when they influenced the election, the evidence came many years later when the Supreme Court took cognizance of it. My point is that to describe Pakistan as anything but a semi-democracy is just not right. Let's acknowledge the realities.
But in this situation, is there any evidence that the military intervened? No.
Again, when and how will we know the evidence? My point is, again, how and why do judges of the Supreme Court go against the process that is already enshrined? I agree with Shuja that there are these two provisions of the Constitution that describe the qualifications of a member of parliament. And Mr. Sharif was wrong when other parties said we should scrap these, because these were put into the Constitution by General Ziaul Haq arbitrarily as a means of ensuring that there will be some review of who can be a member of parliament. That's like Iran, where the Supreme Council of the Guardian Council decides who can and cannot be a member of parliament. Pakistan shouldn't be a democracy like that. And I agree again with Shuja saying that parliaments and for that matter prime ministers' tenures are not sacrosanct in a parliamentary democracy. But nor is it a normal reality in most countries that no parliament or no electorate is given a chance to vote against or vote out a prime minister. Why should judges of the Supreme Court directly, in this particular case, they could have said, there is reason to believe that there has been corruption, please investigate and let there be a trial. Here is a man who has been disqualified without a trial. There has been no trial of corruption.
Judge and jury, yeah.
Well, so the Supreme Court should be the last court of appeal. It should not be the court of first instance. And when it is, people always suspect that there is a hidden hand, usually of the military or the intelligence service. I'm not saying there is, I have no evidence. But that's the pattern of Pakistani history.
Shuja, would you like to respond to that? Do you think that
yes,
there was a hidden hand as Ambassador?
I don't think we have the proof, and I don't know when we'll get the proof, although in Pakistani politics now, and particularly with the advent of a very activist media, leaks do occur. And this has happened in the recent past, that internal information is leaked out, and we will know if the military was aiming for what's known as a -1 formula. But Nathan, there are two elements to this dismissal. One was the application of Article 62 and the ROPA, where the misrepresentation of assets on which the Supreme Court acted. The other is the actual case of corruption, money laundering, hiding of assets.
Involving the Dubai company, yeah.
And various other
others,
entities.
yeah.
You know, the shell games of ownership by different members of the family and so on, which were denied by the Prime Minister, but for which neither he nor his family nor his associates could provide adequate information as to what the sources were. That matter has been sent for trial. Within the next 6 weeks, a case is to be prepared and presented, and within 6 months it is to be adjudicated, and then we will know if there is something for which he and his family are to be held responsible.
But meanwhile, as Ambassador Haqqani said, he's out of office, so I mean...
He is, but his government remains, and I think that's a good thing, because, and here I should mention something in support of what Ambassador Haqqani was saying too, and what Imran Khan also, I think, put quite well. It's a very flawed system, and there is actually a complicit arrangement between all the political parties, or almost all the political parties, including Imran Khan, because he has tried to exercise this right. Article 14 of the Constitution of Pakistan prohibits any member of parliament, male or female, from exercising his or her own right to vote on a particular issue. If it goes counter to his or her party's view, then the person is removed. So this is political servitude.
Right.
And this is not democratic.
Politics and dynastic politics is also a reality which many of us obviously do criticize. So there's much more to criticize than just the Supreme Court's role, just the military, and of course the political parties' own failure to have internal democracy.
This is fascinating because dynastic politics in Pakistan is well known, but also we're seeing it increasingly around the world as well, especially in democracies. I want to bring you in. So could this dynastic rule a little bit be broken at the next elections, consider this controversy and others? Does Imran Khan, the sort of populist, we're used to populists a little bit around the world at the moment, have a window of opportunity here?
He certainly has a window of opportunity, and you know, the usual history in Pakistan has been when parties in power suffer setbacks like this through a kind of intervention by the army or the courts, then that sends out a message that the permanent establishment is not interested in their return, and that sends out a kind of a ripple effect within the parties. They start breaking away. There are forward blocks created, and in Mr. Sharif's party, it remains to be seen what happens in the next 6 months. As was mentioned earlier, that there will be a trial, and within 6 months we'll find out whether Sharif and his family are convicted or they are let, or they go scot-free. But in that whole situation of pressure and uncertainty, the ruling party may suffer some kind of setback, and there may be people defecting to Imran Khan's party. But it's all speculative. We can't really say for sure. But on a larger question of dynastic politics and political parties, look, the facts are very clear. Half of Pakistan turns 70 this month. Half of Pakistan's life has been ruled directly by the military. The other half has been controlled democracy. In a context of a controlled democracy where you have interventions like these, political parties do not evolve organically like they do in other democratic polities. And Pakistan's democracy needs time, uninterrupted elections, and full civilian authority for that to happen, for reforms to take place. Already there have been many reforms in the last 1 decade of democracy after Musharraf, and I think the process showed a lot of promise, and I hope that this process continues, as Mustafa says, and we'll see further changes.
Mustafa Sayed, obviously the region's watching this very closely, and investors in Pakistan. You're on the China-Pakistan investment there. What is the region worried about, and can you reassure people from the outside that this won't add to instability in Pakistan, or do you think it will?
Yeah, firstly, if I can just respond to what was earlier said, I think we need to view this in a different paradigm. I think it's all too easy to attack and do military bashing of Pakistan every single time when any change happens. I remember when September 11th happened, there was a T-shirt which was very popular. It said, "Anything I do, blame it on Al-Qaeda." So they reminded me of this T-shirt because anything that happens in Pakistan, there are some segments which always point fingers towards the military. I think it should be seen as a very positive change, because 10 years ago, Anand, you could not imagine for a prime minister in office to be held accountable and to be investigated. So I think it shows that our institutions have evolved, they have come of age, whether it's the media, where Raza Rumi has been playing a very important and positive role in the past, or there are other institutions like the parliament, where the parliament decided whether the role of Pakistan in the war in Yemen should be or should not be, should Pakistan participate or not.
Yeah.
So you can see that we have evolved, and as far as the region is concerned and CPEC is concerned, the
China-Pakistan Economic Corridor,
this magnitude of $46 billion, as you know, is till 2030. So it is not linked with any one particular party or any one particular government. And that was also demonstrated in the Belt and Road Forum, which was held in May of this year, where all chief ministers, all 4 chief ministers accompanied the Prime Minister, Mr. Nawaz Sharif at the time, to the Belt and Road Forum, and also the CPEC Joint Coordination Committee meeting, which was held in December 2016 in Beijing, where all the 4 provinces were represented along with the Prime Minister, along with the federal cabinet in Beijing, and all the political parties of those different provinces, whether it's the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or whether it's the Pakistan People's Party, were there. So I think when it comes to projects like CPEC and other important projects of national interest, all the political parties do seem to be in unison and in harmony, and have, at least of late, put politics aside. So I think that the message of continuity, the message of taking such developments and such projects at the same pace with priority, it remains, and the the change in government or change in Prime Minister will not affect, you know, the progress or relationship of Pakistan with its partners.
Thank you. Ambassador Haqqani, you wanted to pick up on the military point.
Quick response. Mustafa betrays his youth when he says that no prime minister has ever been investigated, etc. We actually hanged a prime minister after alleging his involvement in murder. And that too was a case that was eventually decided in the Supreme Court. We have sent several prime ministers to investigations throughout Pakistani history, going back all the way to 1953.
A lot of history in 70 years.
Well, a lot of history in 70 years. That said, and people accept the outcome because there is no choice. What is the choice? Should the people come out in the streets and protest against the Supreme Court, disturbing whatever little rule of law the country already has? The fact still remains that Pakistan's politics is not played by the same rules as politics is played in the rest of the world, both by the political parties and by the establishment. Second
which includes the military.
Which includes the military, which is basically the military is the mainstay. Now let's come to the point of what effect it might have on the investment climate in the country. CPEC is not going to be affected. China has made a long-term commitment to Pakistan. It has made a long-term bet on Pakistan. It's a strategic decision. It's not just a business decision. CPEC's downside is that Pakistan will end up being heavily indebted to China with a huge sort of loan portfolio that will be controlled by China. Which will have ramifications for other things. There is across-the-board agreement in Pakistan. I'm one of the minority from Pakistan who questions that. Other investment will be affected. There is a reason why Pakistani businessmen and the richest of the rich keep lots of money abroad. And the reason is because it only shows uncertainty, uncertainty in decision-making. And that will definitely affect. For example, the stock market did not take this decision very well, although it has recovered a little bit. But there will be medium to small investors who will be affected by all of this. And the overall feeling of turmoil, the word turmoil being used in relation to Pakistan is not good for Pakistan. If Pakistan can move more in the direction of being a normal parliamentary democracy, that will really be good for Pakistan.
Mustafa Sayed, you wanted to respond just quickly to Ambassador Haqqani on the debt situation?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that of the $46 billion of CPEC, $35 billion are energy investments on build, operate and transfer basis, in which the borrower is the Chinese company. So the government of Pakistan, let me just make it clear for the record, is not borrowing any debt from the government of China. It's the Chinese corporations which are investing in Pakistan who are the borrowers, who are bringing the debt financing and supplementing the investments with equity investments. So this perception that there's a huge debt issue which will haunt Pakistan in the years to come is misplaced.
One final word from Shuja Nawaz on the future of Pakistan. Now we've seen this political turmoil, and do you see it as a good thing or a bad thing short and long term?
Well, turmoil is never a good thing, whether it's the United States or Pakistan, because it doesn't allow domestic investment, long-term investment, or foreign investment. However, I want to pick up on something that Raza Rumi said, which was looking to the elections next year. When the elections take place, and they will, I think it'll be very critical that they be held on the basis of the new census of Pakistan, because that will change the political map of Pakistan. It will alter the shape of the current political parties. It shift the political power from the countryside and the feudals to the cities and to the youth who are inhabiting these mega cities of Pakistan. So I'm looking to that as a watershed moment in Pakistan's political history.
Well, thank you so much. The world will be watching, of course, an even more important election given recent developments. From here in Washington, D.C. and from Islamabad and New York, I want to thank our panel. That's all we have time for, but remember, the conversation does continue online. Chat with us about this or any other show on Twitter. We're at CGTN America, or visit us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/CGTN America. I'm Nathan King in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for being with us.